Let me first express my gratitude to John for bringing me here, and also for the time and timely support of Petra for just along the way. Every time I just text her WhatsApp, just responded right away. Thanks, very much appreciate that. Okay, so my talk is about the transformation of the waterscapes in the Vietnamese Mekong Delta. What I just demonstrate the contested political relationships between water management and adaptation.
You should be able to use the distance.
Okay. All right. Okay, those are the things. Oh, sorry. Those are the things I'm gonna cover from my talk. It's about the first one is about the short description of the Vietnamese Mekong Delta, and also the challenges facing the Delta over the last few decades. The next point is about the transformation of the waterscapes and impacts on the local households, livelihoods. And one of the key points I want to talk is about relationship between state-led water management and how it's shaped the farmer-led adaptation on the ground, whereby they can also interpret the kind of the power asymmetries through the water justice perspective. And the last point is about how to navigate towards water adjusted for livelihood sustainability. We don't have to wait until the end of this section, just jump in if you have any questions or anything you want to say, just feel free to do so. Thank you. Okay, just very briefly walk you through the location of the Vietnamese Mekong Delta. You can see here on the map, here is the Mekong region, and here's the lower Mekong Basin. And the Vietnamese Mekong Delta is located in the southernmost tip of the region. What is this about? Like, in terms of the land area, the Delta is, roughly nearly 4 million hectares. And the majority of the Delta has been devoted to agricultural production. It's about 2.6 million hectares. And economically, the Delta contributes substantially to the national as well as the regional socioeconomic development. In terms of agricultural development, or kind of the, rice, especially rice production. Here, according to the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry 2020, is 95% of the exported rice comes from this region. And of course, some other, like relevant to fish, basa fish or some other kind of fish, contributing to 60% of that. You can see on the map on the right-hand side, the upper part of the Mekong Delta is the floodplains. Okay, every year this area is exposed to floods. Okay, and in the lower part of the Mekong Delta is the coastal zone. Is annually exposed to saltwater intrusion every year. So for today's presentation, I'm going to focus only to these two areas. Okay, with some case studies. All right. Okay. So what are the challenges facing the Delta? There's three main challenges. The first one is you can see there is transboundary impacts of the hydropower development upstream. You can see on the upper stretch of the Mekong River is about 13 mainstream dams in the Chinese territory. This is about 12 is being operated recently. And then when you go to the lower stretch, especially in Laos, it's about 9 hydropower dams. And you can see 2 of them, the Sudbury and Dong Sahong, in operation. And over here is Sudbury and Dong Sahong over here. It's all very close to the border of Cambodia. And we have like two hydropower dams in Cambodia, but fortunately, these two projects has been postponed. I said that it's been postponed for the last 10 years, but I'm not sure how much longer we're waiting for before it's constructed. Okay. Second, climate change impacts. It's very obvious that you can see here the precipitation as well as the temperature. And look at apart from the one in the meteorological station measure in China, we have like here in Vientiane in Vietnam, one of the gauging stations in Vietnam. You see the huge variation of the precipitation as well as like the temperature over time from 1982 over on the way to 2022. Especially when you see from during this time, because of the impact of annual events, you see the precipitation during these years very low. That also impacts substantially on the supply of water flows in the Vietnamese Mekong Delta. And the third one, which is a very important one as well, this in situ or localized impacts is about the processes of the water infrastructure development in terms of dykes, in terms of canal excavation. I can see here, this is a very crisscrossed, network of canals and dykes. According to a recent report published by the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, which is now the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment, there's about at least 13,000 kilometers of dykes been built in the Mekong Delta, as well as over like 42,000 kilometers of primary and secondary canals here. Yeah, you can see. Yeah. The key thing of the key function of the main purpose of building dykes in the floodplain is to control floods, to protect human beings or the local communities from the impacts of floods. While in the coastal zone in the Mekong, right here is, here's a scheme. The sluice scheme is built in order to store fresh water, in order to intensify rice production or to boost agricultural production in general, as well as to prevent the subwater intrusion in these areas. Okay, so just a little bit about how the waterscape in the Mekong Delta is transformed over time and its impacts across different ecological zones. The first one is we start with the opening up of the Mekong Delta. You can see in the map there. And 1858, like here especially from 1705 to 1858 is during the Nguyen Dynasty, and also until like the colonization of the French colonization. Only 3 main canals been built. The key thing is just to strengthen national defense here. We call it Vinte Canal. It's been built along the border of Vietnam and Cambodia. It's trying to strengthen the national defense, and also exploit lands for resettlement. There's a lot of we try to attract settlers from elsewhere in the central part of Vietnam to live here, to settle here, and also for the rice cultivation during the French colonization. From there until 1975, before the Vietnam War, and also many canals was being built, in order to construct new settlements over here, across the central part of the Mekong, right here, and also improve transportation to new areas, as well as to activate the flood control programs. And the last stage, after 1975 until now, you see so many canals being built. And one of the key focuses of this period of time is to intensify rice productions. From 1 crop to 2 crops and to 3 crops per year. And also, make sure that the national as well as the local governments trying to make sure that the delta should be water-free or flood-free in order to make to provide space available for rice production. And so many efforts have been made by the local governments in trying to build some dykes and canals in order to drain water, flood water out from the delta to the sea over here. And the next one, I show you how it works in particular context of the 2 main stress zones here in the floodplains. For example, here we call it like the planet of reeds. It consists of the three provinces. It's about 700,000 hectares, and has been many canals and rivers over here, and we drain, flood water over here, down here, and out to the sea. And this side, we call it the Long Water Triangle, and it's about 500,000 hectares. And also others, so many things also built, to empty the delta by draining off the flood water out to the West Sea. Right here, there's so many things going on, especially, in the 1990s. Okay. Second stage, close enough of the delta. What does it mean? Okay. Just tell you something about a story of the dike evolution in the delta over time. Imagine that, 100 years ago, like in the delta, like flood times, and the local communities just cultivate only one crop a year, and we call it the floodplains. Only one crop a year, lots of many months. Okay, and the yield is not very high, and at the time there was no dikes around here, right? So it's almost empty, and just when flood comes, the flood sells, only one crop a year, and then because of the demands, increased demands, local handlers in terms of having food to eat, all kind of stuff, and they believe that we need to build some dike in order to intensify the cross production, from one crop a year into two crops a year, and this took place. It started during the late 1970s. Okay, and where one group of farmers in John Province, with the province in the floodplains, they initiated like, okay, we're just set up like the low dikes in order to protect the second crop. Okay, in order to protect or prevent the entry of the early flood water to come into the rice field in order to protect it. So that's why they just set up. We call it low dike or semi dike. Okay, and here it's just like two crops a year. But then based on this, it's very successful case. And then, the national is where the local women come in and say, okay, we're going to just, build, just top up the dikes in order to, produce like 3 crops per year. And then that's how, the high dike is developed. Okay. It can allows, local farmers to cultivate 3 crops per year. And they're very high, from 3 to 4 meters high. And here is, completely protected by the dike. That means floods cannot come in. Okay. And this, from this initiative, has been, distributed across the floodplains, even some other zones that may come together all the time. So, see, I took this photo, during the flood season over in the same spot. And again, during like when this one has been empty, to get space for rice production, and also same space right here. So from flood here, and it's been substituted with the rice fields over there. Okay. In the coastal zones, okay, they're all the last one is in the floodplains and the coastal zones. In the coastal zones, it's witnessed the state-led development of, we call it the freshening the coastal zone policy by the national as well as the local governments in building, kind of the loose systems. It's said that just to store fresh water for domestic consumption, as well as for agricultural production, and also to prevent the soil intrusion encroachment into the inland areas. So they started with kind of this setting the the permanent freshwater zones in Kamau Peninsula over here, right here, right? So originally this area is just like the ecological system is just like a sunline, okay? And the local communities, they live on kind of raising shrimp, okay, as one of the main crops, and it just generated a huge profit. But then during 1990s, and the national government is trying to transform this area into this one, by kind of setting up, building a lot of, schemes over there as a satellite to transform this huge area into the, freshwater permanent area to intensify grass production. Okay. And they set up a lot of, sluice schemes across the coastal line over here. And this is the first stage. The second stage, it comes with, we call it like a second state of coastal refreshment and the coastal zone policy launched by the national government. The second stage, like they don't just transform this area into the permanent freshwater permanent areas, so they try to convert the river system into reservoirs, to turn the rivers into reservoirs in order to store freshwater. Okay, and also to build the very big, sewage system over there. And one of the very controversial, sewage system is in Unravelling, okay, in the coastal zone of Unravelling. The name is the Allied sewage system. All right. So what are the impacts? Okay, so there are a range of impacts. The first one is the change in flood systems. Okay, so so many years, like we can see right here, for example, from 2000 all the way to 2022, and this is a water level that we gauged from the two gauging stations, one in Chao in Mekong River, we call it the river in Vietnamese. And also the another one is from the Chao gauging station in Basak River or Hao River, right here. So you can see the trends, the variation, the trends in the water, the peak of the water just, decreasing over time, okay, in both rivers. And you can see here, if the peak just, from over, equivalent to or over 450 centimeters, you see it's a high flood. But then you can see here, it's all mostly, it goes down. It's less than 400 centimeters. It's low. Okay, the peak is going low over the years now. Okay, so given that, sorry. Okay, I missed this. Okay, the second impact, which is very significant, is about the riverbank erosion. The very, very serious and cause catastrophic impacts on the lives of the local communities is because of the huge sediment that has been trapped by the hydropower dams, especially in the upstream region. And also the sand extraction, local sand extraction for construction, because we are the high demand of sand for construction in the Mekong Delta. So these cause, the river erosion, which is now become very serious now in the Mekong Delta. Third one, that just as I mentioned this morning, I'm very interested in this one because we experience like the erosion and loss of traditional livelihoods, so ecological knowledge systems. And here you can see that many people, fishers, the fisher folks, they live on catching fish every year. When flood comes, it brings a lot of, resources for local inhabitants to live on, by catching fish. But now because of, the decline of the water resources, and also because of the dykes and because of this intensification of the fried crops. And, farmers, they use a lot of pesticides, agrochemicals, as a result, destroy a huge amount of the wild fish stocks. And there are no ways for the local communities to live on fishing. Relevant to that is the loss of the ecological knowledge inherent to, strategies or approaches to catch fish that they develop many, many years. Okay, and also one of the other impacts that takes place in the coastal zone is the more like a high intensity of the saltwater intrusion in the region. And here, because the high concentration of the salt water in the ponds, so that destroy the stream over there. And stream farmers, they suffer from a big loss because of this. And the last one is about increased costs, faced by rice farmers in terms of, because of the loss of, because flood, that doesn't come anymore. So because flood brings, natural fertility for essential for the soil. But now, with the, destruction of the flood systems, and farmers have to apply a lot of pesticides as well as fertilizer to compensate for the loss of the alluvium or the sediment supplied by the floods. And also the water consumption. And here, you see the tractors that carry fresh water, and then they from place to place, sell water to people, just because they during especially in the dry season. And as a result, the cost increased significantly. Okay, so here how the state water, the state-led water management shapes of farmers' adaptation, and this is the case in the floodplains. You can see here the development of the water infrastructure in terms of dykes or canals, and because of the construction of the dykes, and you see the widespread adoption of agricultural machinery because dykes develop, and then it's possible for farmers to use the machinery to cut rice or some other stuff, and for those who live on manual labor, like especially for the poor farmers, they live on cutting rice, they don't have job anymore. Okay, and also the increased application of pesticides for agriculture production, like rice production, but also the dye also help contribute to reducing habitats for fish and other aquatic resources, and this cause kind of is deprived of the job opportunities faced by local communities, and also degrade the local environments. The kind of water pollution or water contamination because of the huge amount of fertilizers or pesticide used, and also the decline in natural aquatic resources, especially fish stocks. And then as a result of that, and those poor in the rural areas, they are landless or they're young, they have to migrate. And they see that migration is the main means of adaptation. Okay, one segment of the societies migrate, and they are landless and they're young. They have health, good condition to seek jobs in the urban areas. Some others stay back. Okay, so here we call it in situ adaptation. Who are they? They are just rice farmers. They have land to cultivate rice. And for those who are not very good health conditions, they decided to stay back in order to maintain their livelihoods by catching fish or some other resources for their livelihoods. And also the fish farmers, mostly they are very old, they don't have good health to do that, as like the other group. And here they're seen as gatekeepers of national food security. Okay, you can imagine that if everyone just go to cities and no one to stay back in the rurals in order to cultivate fish, and that impacts like national global food security, because Vietnam so far does a very good job in taking care of the national global food security. We export a lot of rice to the Philippines and some other countries in Southeast Asia, right? Of course, Thailand also do the same thing. And okay, those farmers, those people, they stay back and then exploit resources. Like, for example, rice farmers, given the dike system over there, and they have to exploit the soil, okay? Because they practice so many crops in a year, and then they have to, increasingly exploit the soil, okay? That means fertility of the soil, or of course they, apply a lot of pesticides as well, and fertilizer for the crops, and also fish farmers, okay? Also keep fishing, catching fish, and use like a very kind of destructive approaches to catch fish, like electrofishing devices, right? And it destroy fish substantially. And as a result of this, they cause livelihoods precarious. That they facing precarity of the livelihoods because of what? Because of the the market price of the rice just, just up and down. And when they invest a lot of money or labor into, the crop, but then when it sell the price, they most of the time, they cannot get the revenue as expected. For fish, the more people or fish farmers use the destructive, approaches or methods to catch fish, they are, vulnerable or victimized by their actions, right? And not many fish available for them to catch. And of course, they're facing precarious livelihoods. Okay, in the context of the coastal zone, especially in the case of the Balai, you can see in the coastal zone here is the Balai scheme is built in 2000, operated in 2002. And one of the cases that I undertook in one of my studies. So here is the setup, okay, to build the canal, the scheme over here. And then turn this area into all the way up here into the freshwater zone. But here another commune just, out of the boundary of the scheme is still exposed to the saltwater intrusion every year. Okay, so it's just to make a comparison between the two areas. So you can see how things are going. Okay, as I said, the construction of Balai system into in order to provide, the freshwater supply for domestic consumption as well as agricultural production, and also it also provides water, especially pipe water for household consumption, and also preventing the saltwater intrusion. Okay, so those are the impacts of the scheme. Okay, this is the list of the impacts. They transform the waterscapes, especially in the freshwater zones, in a set of demarcation between the freshwater zone and salinity zones. And one of the key things is like there's a loss of brackish water environment. Okay, because it's just usually freshwater, brackish, and salt water. But now when it's set up, when they build the scheme, the brackish water environment has disappeared. Okay, and you see that many varieties of fish, stocks, and they find a very good environment for the brackish species living there, and they're all gone. Okay, and also the loss of seasonal tidal interactions that nurture the river system. Okay, what happened? It's just to make a comparison between the pre-construction context of the scheme and the post-construction context. And we can use like the free adaptation, and now this is a forced adaptation in after the construction of the scheme. For the freshwater zone is located in the upstream of the Mekong River, of the Balai River. Before the scheme is built, so the local livelihoods just depend on the wide aquatic resources and saline and brackish water, and livelihoods practices like stream farming is one of the main livelihoods of the local communities. But what happened after the scheme was built and to change almost everything? See, the traditional livelihood system has been disrupted, especially stream farming. Okay, because in freshwater zone, stream farming is not allowed. Okay, you are, it's completely banned. Okay, and here people depend, especially the livelihood activities there, they depend predominantly on freshwater, like some other like rice or some kind of the second fruits, gardens, everything there. And okay, so what happened in another commune located next to the coastal zone is a Tanfu commune. And of course, in the pre-construction context, it's kind of very similar to Tanjay. But then when the scheme was built, we facing kind of contamination of the water, especially for those who live in upstream zone. They just they just dump a lot of waste into the river, and then every month the scheme is like they just open the gate to flow just fresh water out to the estuary, and we see that it's easy to predict that the contaminated water has been flowed out, and it causes some kind of problems for those who live in the estuaries, and for those who just live on cultivate flood cockles. in estuaries also face the problem because of the cross-flowing water drainage, from the upstream water flow. Okay, so there is evidence of farmers' exercise of everyday politics. What is it be? Every politics, according to Thong and Dung, they define it is defined as efforts of subordinate groups in engaging subtle and non-confrontational resistance to secure de facto gains or through disobedient practices. What does it mean in the context of by a scheme case study? So farmers there in the freshwater zone, they build the stream pond, and which is surrounded by the freshwater crops. Because the local women wants them, all of them have to, okay, farmers are required to cultivate freshwater crops only. But they tried to do something different from that policy. Why? Because I just contacted with, in the focus group discussions where it's in-depth interviews with local community members over there. And I just asked them, okay, they said, okay, you see my house over there is made of cement, it's a big house over there. And the money is from the stream farming, from bananas or rice or, even, coconuts, because the price of those commodities, just fluctuate, frequently. So it's very interesting. So they try to maintain this kind of livelihoods, and those that violate law or the rules or the principles by the local movements. Okay, you can see here, this is the stream pond here. It's surrounded by coconuts and local farmers. They try to grow coconuts or bananas around the pond to, it's hard for the local woman officials to say, oh, you guys don't follow the rules, because no, farmers say, oh, I still plant bananas there and coconuts over there. The next one is try to, we call it like there's acts of invasion or dissent and deception in farming practices. Okay, they do this because they try to build the open faith running water well, because in order to do this, in order to cultivate the stream there, you have to, pump up the raw water from the freshwater zone, okay, and make it available for stream farming. And this is bad, okay? In this case, they try to, build the open fake one, just obvious, make sure everyone can see it. But then the real one that use for, stream farming is somewhere to just hide somewhere in the bush or something else. And most of the time, the local women's fish can find it, okay? And it's very interesting to know that they maintain productive stream farming is means of power backing with the local women. It's like, okay, you see that when I maintain stream farming, I can, get a lot of money from that. But it just you wants me to cultivate a banana or coconut. You see that we cannot get as much return as possible as we expect. And to some extent, the government officials said they're but then there's no way for them to do, because it's kind of still the consultation is going on back and forth like that. Okay, so for the next one, when I reflect the power asymmetries from perspective of the water justice, so I look into four dimensions. The first one is distributional justice. Trying to understand the question, who gets what? Residual justice, who makes decisions? Epistemic justice, whose knowledge counts? And the last one, recognition justice, who gets left behind? Based on the two case studies in floodplains and the coastal zone. For the first one, distributional justice, who gets what? Resemble in the context of the floodplains, the dykes or the canals built, they allow the rice farmers to intensify crops. But at the same time, they possess livelihoods of others, especially those who are landless, who are poor. Freshwater privatization allows farmers in the freshwater zone, in the context of in the coastal zone, to diversify the agriculture-based livelihoods like rice or some other freshwater crops. But for those who live in the downstream, in the estuary zones, they face, the freshwater drainage. And facing the water pollution and the loss of the crowd, especially the block couples that I just said earlier. Second, procedural justice to make decision in political context of Vietnam, kind of top-down approach. You see very obvious to see that national, local ones, they are key decision makers. And especially with regard to the water management infrastructure development, they play a key role in making decisions in design, construction, and operation of these systems, especially dykes or canals and sluices. And of course, local governments just largely marginalized from such processes. Whose knowledge counts? When they build the infrastructure systems, they say, okay, only answer can do that. And technical knowledge dominates in this regard. So the local governments, they shake hands with the expert or technicians, in order to build such infrastructure systems. While the tech over here owned by the local communities mainly, disregarded. Who gets left behind? Okay. The poor household, they depends on the resource collection by the white fish stocks. It's just marginalized, and then they're not, their livelihood is not recognized by the local government because it just the construction of the water management system is just accommodate the mandate, the stated mandates in terms of intensifying grass production and developing of the agricultural production. Those who practice on resource collection is not recognized politically. Okay, and others in the context of the coastal zones, scarcity, and local farmers, they want to maintain additional livelihood practices like stream farming, because in the freshwater zone is not allowed, it's not permitted. So of course they also lag behind because of this, because of the policy of the national, the local government in building the sluice system. Okay, how to navigate towards water justice? There's some kind of recommendations from the case studies, and then the rural communities should be placed at the center of rural and agricultural development policies. And one of the things is like the water infrastructure development policy should be aligned with the rural communities needs and aspirations. Okay, so instead of just ignoring them or disregarding them, and then this kind of negotiation, helps them to sustain the livelihoods and source of income. Okay, not just fresh water is dominantly important. Brackish and salty water is also provides important resources for household economy. Okay, they should be equally recognized to the local economy and rural, especially in for those who live in the coastal zone of the Mekong. And also kind of the formal informal engagement platform is also important, that somehow provides for the knowledge exchange and the sharing between the local governments and the local communities. Okay, so those are the conclusion for my presentation. And so I have to read all of these, but one of the key things I want to emphasize is like the forced adaptation. You can see one of the slide I just presented, because of the water development policy, it leads to the forced adaptation faced by local communities. And it comes as a result of the water management policies. And for now, there are two trends of adaptation, forms of adaptation. Migration is applicable for those who have a good health, young, and for those who are not very good health condition, or they have land to stay there, and they sustain their livelihoods by exploiting the curriculum and local resources, and they are also experience the livelihood precarity. And the last one, the power asymmetries, as seen through the lack of community development decision-making processes, especially in the water policy. You can see the two cases in the floodplains, also in the coastal zone areas. So that just conclude my presentation here, and I'm very appreciate for your attention, especially just very hard to keep you awake, especially after lunch, but I think it's appreciate that a lot, and I welcome your comments and questions. Thank you so much.
Many thanks for a super interesting talk. Really complemented the morning talks in terms of shifting our focus to agriculture and to the impact of flood management on agriculture. I have a couple questions,
Sure.
and then obviously open up. So, two questions are this: your approach, your talk is clearly informed by the work of James C. Scott, and also by his very first PhD student, Benedict Kerkvliet, whose book Everyday Politics, Everyday Resistance in Vietnam is inspired by Scott's Weapons of the Week and other work. In that book, Kerkvliet talks about the forms of resistance that thwarted or at least complicated, compromised collectivization in the Mekong Delta and in southern Vietnam in general in the latter half of the 70s and into the 1980s. So are the forms of everyday politics that you're observing, decades later, in some ways, bearing traces of legacies, inheritances, practices, relations can you draw some sort of line between the two? And then the other question is, you noted in one of your slides and briefly mentioned this tendency towards sort of monocropping, monoculture that comes with this, this form of water management that, among other things, separates out, the fresh water from brackish water. And I was curious about whether that is simply a matter or largely a matter of specific state policies. And if so, is it a bit like what you see in China with the so-called dragonhead enterprises, where you have state directives that sort of mandate that, oh, this village is going to, focus on this crop and a whole set of incentives and also agricultural inputs that are coming through state policies. And if so, are those also intertwined with certain kinds of state or quasi-state or private agribusiness interests? Or is it that the tendency towards monocropping, monoculture and also the associated dispossession of rural poor, is it that you also see in this a kind of aggregation of land holdings that somehow is also deliberately or structurally or unintentionally, accidentally produced? So I'm curious about the sort of causal logics and also potential interests driving those trends, because that's very much against what Scott sort of, idealizes in terms of an estuarial river delta area with all the hybridities and flora and fauna and crops and and the opposite of monoculture and monocropping.
Okay, so thanks for that. So I tried to find the first question, referring to Dan Scott's definition of everyday politics, and followed by Kerkvliet and the others. Yeah, I think okay, when I conduct the studies in the Malay case study, you can see that if we just compare with the definition of everyday politics defined by such scholars, I think it's very much relevant to that. Somehow hidden somewhere, like you don't have to just obviously engage in kind of strikes or something else, but they try to do that. They just do that in a hidden way, and in a way that is not confront the local government officials. And that's what I've indicated in one of the strategies applied by the local communities. Like they try in one way, they try to build a shrimp pond in the middle of the land, and then I plant some other kind of freshwater trees around. Yeah, so in this case, in one way, they try to maintain the livelihoods, right? Because they believe that, and also convinced that, the output or, the revenues generated by, such freshwater communities like bananas or some rice or coconuts, does not secure their livelihoods, right? And to just take that as a case, like, okay, look at this. You know that, we facing precarity of the livelihoods of the communities because we follow your policy, like throwing such commodities. And you said that's for us. But then compare that with the shrimp pond, which is every 4 months, we just, harvest the shrimp and then we can sell it with a very high price. And we get a lot of profit out of that. It's very obvious. That's why, one of the slides, I should put that, take that is to negotiate with the local government officials. And they're convincing enough, right? So they do that not only one individual household, but also, they talk together and discuss each other. Okay, those are strategies we should hold on to in order to somehow, at the same time, maintain our livelihoods is one of the key things, but also to some extent, follow the rules or the policy of the local government officials. And it turns out that, when, the government officials come and they visit the site, okay, will you follow that one? But then they go back and forth. But one of the things is like that the local government officials are those with the members of the community. They understand they're not the outsiders, right? They want to play. Sometimes like they are relatives of the farmers. They, they understand. Well, it's rather sympathetic. It's sympathy with the situation and understand the situation. And just like close the eyes, to that situation. And even to some extent, I don't know, but it's just my assumption that to some extent, the local officials, they also practice the same thing. Yeah, because that's important because livelihood is one of the key things, right? Mm. Yeah. So, I think that I found that's very relevant to the everyday politics in my case study, and it's still going at the moment, right? And that never stops. It's still out there, but it's not obvious. It's hidden somewhere underground until you go to the site, talk to people, and you understand the situation. Right. When I first came there and conduct the study, I didn't know what happened. I was just saying, "Oh wow, see so many shrimp ponds there," and so wow. And farmers strategically, plant a lot of the coconut trees around and some other bananas, and I took the photos. And then I talked to them, and I talked to the local government officials who was in the office of agriculture and environment, and thought, yeah, there's something interesting with there. But it's just like something that they just it's not very kind of confrontational, but it just somehow they understand each other and then just let it be, leave it that, okay? And of course, it's interesting that local government officials they understand the situation, even then, because one of the key things they are members of the communities and they understand the situation very, very much. For the second question, is there something relevant to the model crop? Also the accumulation of the lands or something. That's your question. Again, it's not obvious, right? For those who have a lot of money, that have rich, wealthy farmers over there, they try to accumulate lands in some way, and then it's recorded, but it's just fine. So they buy the lands from others, but then they ask relatives to with the names there on the certificates of the land, right? Because they the road. They strategically apply that in order to accumulate lands, and especially for rice production is the main thing. Yeah, and you can see that who gets and also who lose, right? For those who are landless. Before the building of the dykes, they are hired to cut rice or do some kind of manual labor in order to get low wages in the rivers, but in order to support the families. But now because of the dykes everywhere, and then this replaced completely by machines, agriculture, by the combined harvester. There's no place or opportunity for the poor to stay back in order to do the job that they did before, and then they have to go. And the building of the dykes also provides opportunities for farmers with lands to accumulate some more capital in some way, and also accumulate the land. They buy some more lands for their family. But then I know the situation is there. We know that. But then So in the context of the Vietnamese Mekong Delta, rice is one of the main crops. And one of the thing is like the provincial governments do try to secure like the land devoted to rice production should be maintained. Okay, because the output of the rice for every year we have to, you have to meet certain demand or call set by the national government. So that's one of the key things that the provincial governments want to, keep the areas of the, rice production land for that instead of just, converting it to some other purposes. So you can see that's why, rice is one of the kind of monocrop form of production in the Mekong. Yeah, I'm sure I respond to your question, but I try my best.
We have some other questions
Thank you.
here.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Tom. I was wondering for the context of, because I was doing research also in Mekong Delta, but mostly about aquaculture and mangrove.
Oh.
And they have this incentive, the payment for ecosystem services, right? So there's percentage of mangrove that needs to be there, and then the rest you can use it for the land for aquaculture. So it's kind of incentives also for the local communities, and that's in the context of ecosystem services. But I don't know if there's any type of legal or regulatory framework or a certain type of incentives in your case on the agriculture, and if so, what is that?
I think there's just no such mechanism apply in agriculture production in terms of rice production. Because I think if you just visit because I know one of the study sites in Tamar Peninsula, the kind of the mechanism or the policy kind of through the co-management mechanism between the local governments, and they allocate the land with the mangroves for local farmers to make use of the system in order to generate or to grow shrimp, for example, while maintaining the density or the mangrove system over there. It's not the case in the rice production system. But one of the things that I just mentioned through the questions raised by John, like the provincial governments try to maintain the areas of land, the land areas devoted to rice production, because that's the rule is set by with a certain quota. They have to make sure, for example, this month, this province A, how to contribute like how many million tons of rice, to secure it and to help contribute to the national food security of the country, and also for export. And they have to maintain that, and does not allow for the conversion of the rice production lands to other like orchards or something else for the household land for household homestead or something else.
In that case, it's really a higher regulatory area in which there is no possibility for interaction with the community themselves.
You mean among the community members, or?
But I was just wondering about the possibility of this kind of dialogue. In mangrove system, they have this, right? Because otherwise, without these incentives, they could just open the whole land for shrimp farming, which is, like you said, it's much more actually beneficial for their economy. So I was just wondering if there's any kind of
for rice farmers. Oh, it just there's no way. They just follow rules. It just they keep practicing cultivating crops every year. It depends on the area, like 2 crops or 3 crops. But most of the time they try, because they say, or just talk to them. Okay, what do we just reduce 1 crop or 2 crops per year in order to do something else? Because the thing is completely uncertain, because the market is who they don't know what's going to happen. For example, if you just grow up this kind of crop, but then when you harvest it, you experience a very low price of that community, and you are the person, you are the farmers, and you suffer from that directly. So there's a lot of risks, or a lot of uncertainty in terms of the markets. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges facing farmers. Yeah, please.
Yeah, you mentioned about the saltwater intrusion in the lower Mekong, right? And I know that especially in the dry season, right? And when nowadays that the Chinese government start building there in the upper Mekong region.
Yeah.
I would like to know if you have any idea how the Vietnamese government try to solve this problem.
Mhm.
How you how you know about it?
Okay, very,
To help the farmer, let's say,
to tell the farmers?
to help the.
Oh, to have the farmers, okay. Thanks for that. It's a challenging question, but I think it's the national government is trying to make a lot of efforts in order to prevent the impacts. The transboundary environment impacts definitely to try to in some way, like, the national governments talk to the Chinese government to just say, provide, allow some kind of water flowing, from Mekong, so that they can farmers in the Mekong Delta can embark on their rice cultivation, for example. At the national or regional level, they kind of the Legitimacy Mekong Corporation. It's a kind of mechanism between the Mekong Regional Commission and the Chinese government in terms of sharing the data, and also kind of agreement, so that they can help the country in the low Mekong basin like Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. For example, during the dry season, in some way, the mainstream dams there can, open the gate or something in order to allow some water flows down to the low Mekong basin, especially for the dry season. As far as I know, this kind of mechanism is very useful in some way. They share the data between the two countries, China and the rest of the countries in the low Mekong basin, the four countries. So that is up to some extent. But then, given the kind of complexity of the climate change and the impacts of any, we're facing the shortage of the water, and of course in China, all of the hydropower operators, they want to store as much water as possible to generate electricity. And then they don't feel that they release much water for the low Mekong basin to get for their policies like agriculture production, for example. This is a very complicated thing.
Yeah.
And I think that of course, given the development of the LM Mekong Commission, to some extent, and some kind of like it can help the situation, resolve the situation to some extent. But I think that even the role of the MRC Mekong Regional Commissions, seems that from my understanding, personal understanding, they don't play the key role in this kind of regulating or make sure we get the protecting for the benefit of the country, the Mekong in the local Mekong basin, with regard to the water issues, or the water retention of Chinese government over there. They mainly functions like providing the knowledge hub.
Okay.
Instead of just having the countries to sit back and discuss, for example, you see even the list of so many hydropower dams in Laos, and also all the two dams are operating at the moment. I'm not sure in the future, like 10 years or next 20 years, some other hydropower dams will be built, and then there's countries like Vietnam or Cambodia are going to suffer a lot from that.
Yeah.
And then given that you see that the construction of the Funan Canal in Cambodia also caused a lot of complexities between the two countries, but there is no way for MRT to discuss that or to engage that. Okay, try to find out to solve the problem, just and of course let it be, just let it go, and then see how things are going. Just I don't trust that. It's very complicated.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thailand is one of the countries I'm going to see very obviously situation.
Yeah, but you Vietnam suffering the most, so you are
I know.
Yeah, that's so. I just like to listen to.
Okay, Thailand, in the you absorb a lot of water from the Mekong as well. And every day the rise very lot. Right, Russian area in the northeast part of Thailand.
Yeah, we try to invite the Chinese government to go in the lower Mekong
Chinese again.
commission meeting.
Oh, okay.
But the Chinese refuse.
Oh.
Refuse to come to the meeting. that is the problems. And now we observe that the salt water intrusion
Mm.
in Vietnam that is pretty far for into inland.
That's right.
Yeah, compared in the past.
Right.
So we are start worrying about that to
Yeah.
your agriculture
You
area.
touched a great point. For example, 2015, 2016, we experienced like the century is a record of saltwater intrusion.
Yeah.
In some years, like the saltwater up, in road was like up to 80 kilometers or 100 kilometers inland.
It's a lot.
Must destroy everything on its way. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So thank you for your presentation first. And then I always come late, so I didn't see the full versions of your presentations, but I read the descriptions here where your paper is discussed about how the state-led water infrastructure shapes adaptation and creates like unequal outcomes like across the delta area. So I think this is reminding me of one case that I've just read from the book in Myanmar, where after the cyclone Nargis happened, and the government restricted international aid to the country, and the communities had to rely on their own coping mechanism, like they eat from fish. And yeah, so my question is like, do you see any parallels like between these cases in terms how the political power influences the environmental vulnerability and limits the local adaptation in delta areas?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think one of the particular example I can tell you is one of the cases in the floodplains. Given the evolutionary expansion of the dike development, that's of course the right space for agriculture mechanization. Farmers, they apply tractors or some other kind of machines to harvest the crops, and that this possess the jobs opportunities of the local poor. And they have to. This is only the different ways of the way that local communities adapt to the situation. One is just migrating, others to stay back, and they try to sustain their livelihoods in different ways. And they see that soil and wild fish stocks, they are free resources, right? But then they, of course, substantially decline. They try to explore as much as they can. Okay, so in order to sustain their livelihoods, because they have no choice, they have no alternative, especially for those who decide to stay back. They are vulnerable to the climate change, the environmental challenges, but at the same time, they have to sustain their livelihoods, right? And there's no other ways for them to do something else than, as a result of that, we facing, the destruction or declining of the wild fish stocks at the maximum level, significantly, and also for those who live on, rice farming, when flood doesn't come in, of course, until now, the national as well as the local, recognize the importance of floods, right? Because usually just to try to fight against the floods, they control floods. They try to drain off the flood water out of the Mekong Delta, making space for rice production, draining out to the West Sea and to the East Sea. But now they need water for rice production, right? And that flood doesn't come anymore, or some kind of the patterns have changed a lot, and they expect floods to come. But then now the situation now is kind of different from decades ago. And the farmers, local communities, the direct victims of that. They brought to that policy, and there's no way for the local women to remove the dykes. Okay, you build dykes. Is it possible for the local women to remove dykes to restore the Mekong Delta to the previous situations where dike built, houses built, gardens, streets, roads, and everything, schools is there. How can you imagine that if you just remove the dikes when it happened, when flood comes? For example, so a lot of uncertainties there, and of course, and then again, the dikes, the water management policies in terms of dikes, they change. The way that local communities sustain their livelihoods, their ways of adaptation. Yeah. In the references, I put a lot of my publications over there. And I'll speak to the main point representative here. If you're interested you just get access to the links and you can read that. Thank you.
More questions?
I've got a question, a very brief one. And I'm sorry, I mean, I don't really know that much about this topic in the context of Vietnam or any Southeast Asian country, to be perfectly honest. But I was wondering to what extent does the Vietnamese government actually recognize maybe the dire situation when it comes to rice farming and be perhaps subsidizes it? Because, for example, in other countries like Thailand, obviously government is still sort of pressing on, you know, rice production as well, but at the same time is trying to subsidize it. And obviously there are some other problems related to that. There have been obviously loads of scandals around that as well. But is the government actively trying to subsidize, or is it just you have to produce this amount and we don't care how we get there? But you know.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor, for your question. But I think somehow links to the question. I forgot to one of the key points, like the development of agribusiness or something, evolution of seems that it's different from Thailand. Farmers, do not get any subsidy from the government in terms of rice farming. They're going to suffer from that as well themselves. It just depends on whether they're lucky or not, right? If the price of rice goes up, farmers get a lot of profits and they keep growing rice again, right? And if they just failure, the drop of the price, they suffer from it, and there's no way policy of the governments to support them. And but another thing is like it's recognized that there's kind of we call it like the company, the big company, they just collaborate with farmers and invite farmers to join, and then with the certain kind of share of the profits at the end. So we call it like a large rice fields, and this kind of strategy initiated by the company, and they try to recruit farmers who collaborate with them, with the company, and the company says provide technical technicians or rice experts, for example, to take care of rice during the rice plantation, and farmers with a certain kind of preset price of the rice to make sure farmers avoid the loss of the price at the end of the harvest of the price. So this kind of initiative, to some extent, works very well, but it's not very sustainable in some way. Yeah, but in terms of the subsidy of the government, it seems that this did not happen. Yeah, so unfortunately.
More questions? Moving along.
Okay, so happy to talk more during the break. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.